What up guys, Jetshells here and welcome back to World of Tanks. I'm pretty excited to show you guys this video today because I am featuring a scout tank that I have not featured on the channel before, on a map that I have not featured on the channel before. And today this game is in my VK 1602 Leopard, the tier 5 German scout tank, on the highway map. Now the VK 1602 Leopard is kind of a forgotten scout tank for the Germans. Not a lot of people play this tank. They play it to keep researching up the German scout tank line to the VK 2801 and the SP1C now, that used to be the Off Panther at tier 7, and the eventually the RU-251. So the Lukes and the RU-251 are kind of the highlights of the German tank line. So this tank does not get a lot of attention. And it's pretty unique in a variety of ways. So I think what I'll do here before I start the battle is just quick go over the summary of the vehicle stats, so you guys get a rough idea of what kind of abilities that this tank has, and we'll go from there. Now the VK 1602 Leopard is kind of an unusual scout tank at tier 5. It doesn't compare very similarly at all with the other two tier 5 scout tanks currently in the game, the ELC AMX, the French scout, and the M24 Chaffee, the American scout. The ELC AMX has a high alpha gun, but poor gun handling, and doesn't have a fully traversable turret. The M24 Chaffee has really good mobility and really good view range for a tier 5 scout, but its gun is much different than the Leopard's, at least one of the guns that the Leopard has. And I'll be talking about the gun selection for this tank in a little bit. But just going over the base stats real quick of this tank, the Leopard gets 380 meters base view range. Now, I've been toying with the idea of actually putting coated optics on this tank as kind of a dual vision equipment fit to go along with binoculars and vents as my last equipment slot. Because my crew in this tank is almost good enough to where I'm getting close to the 445 meters spotting range just with coated optics. So I may do that in the future, but we'll see. So, as I say, the Leopard gets 380 meters base view range, which is 20 more than the Lux does with the tier below this tank. The Leopard has 16.59 percentage camo rating. If you guys don't know how camo rating works, I link a forum thread in every one of my videos called "The Mystery of Camo and Spotting" that I put together a post describing, to the best of my knowledge, how the spotting and camo rating mechanics work and how they interact with each other. So I would really encourage you guys to look at that thread. I learned a lot putting that thread together myself. But anyway, it's got 16.59 percentage camo rating, which is a little bit less than the Lux, so it's not quite as stealthy as the Lux is. It has this same top speed that the Lux has at 16 kilometers per hour. And it has a slightly lower horsepower to ton ratio than the Lux does, however, at 27.61 horsepower per ton ratio, where the Lux gets 28.41. The Leopard gets slightly better terrain resistance stats, though. So the mobility stats kind of even out comparatively to the Lux. It has a slightly higher hull traverse than the Lux does as well, at 36 degrees per second, as opposed to the Lux is 33. And going into the gun handling stats here, this is where this tank is kind of unusual and unique. Now, as you guys know, the Lux at tier 4 gets a 3 centimeter autocannon. Now, this autocannon fires 5 2-round bursts that do 30 damage each. You can use the same gun on the Leopard scout tank. but it gets a different number of shells in the gun. Where the Lux gets a total of 10 shells per magazine, the Leopard gets 12, so you have a slightly higher clip damage potential at 360 damage as opposed to the Lux's 300 even clip damage potential. Also, the Leopard is slightly more accurate with the same gun at 0.46 accuracy as opposed to the Lux's 0.5, which is but both the accuracy on the Lux and the on the Leopard are pretty bad. So you kind of have to get within I would say about 200 to 250 meters if you want to do reasonable amount of damage to your targets, assuming you can pen them, of course. And talking about the penetration here, this gun gets the exact same penetration that it does on the Lux, which is 95 penetration with standard rounds, 110 with APCR, and if for some weird reason you have HE loaded, 15 millimeters of penetration. I would not recommend loading HE in your ammo loadout. It only has 50 millimeters of penetration, and it won't do you very much good in most battle situations. Gun depression is the same on the Lux as it is on the Leopard at 10 degrees gun depression, which is pretty decent. The Leopard has slightly better DPM. Well, actually, we'll call it about 15% better DPM, which is kind of significant. It has a higher clip damage potential because of the extra shells, and it gets a better reload than the Lux does. The Lux has a 17.26 second reload for its clip, and the Leopard gets a 16.78 second reload for its clip. So slightly better reload and more damage potential. However, I think that because of the 95 millimeters of penetration with your standard rounds at the extra tier, the Lux even struggles to pen when it gets into a bottom tier matchup, and the Leopard really struggles to pen some of its targets, even if you get the side or rear of them. So you have to be really strategic of how you position yourself and which targets you decide to engage. And lastly, survivability here, and this is something that all the tier 5 scouts share a weakness in, is their hit points. We won't talk about their armor because it's a light tank, and almost every shell that you receive is going to pen you and do damage to you. But the hit points of the VK 16.02 Leopard is 440, which is the same as the tier 5 American scout tank, the M24 Chaffee, and a little bit higher than the ELC AMX at 400 hit points. But at this tier, that means that you are actually a one-shot for a large portion of the tanks that you will see. And you are definitely a two-shot for almost every tank that you will see. There are some exceptions, of course, like you can see on the enemy team where there's an AMX 12T, a Chinu or T67 where it will take 3 to 4 shots to kill you. But for the most part, you are a one or two shot. Now that's not unusual for a scout tank in certain tiering, but I think it happens more often at this tier because of how little HP you have. So those are the quick stats of the tank. The play style for this tank, I would recommend playing more as an assassin. You can use a single shot gun on this tank. I think it's a 5 centimeter, and you get 67 millimeters of penetration with that gun and 130 with APCR, if I remember correctly. I'm just doing that off the top of my head. But that gun is pretty weak, and if you're using that gun, you might as well be driving the M24 Chaffee. So the speciality of this tank is burst damage, since it has a clip. So you have to look for situations where you can use that. The drawback of this tank, however, is the fact that the clip only does 360 damage. So you aren't going to be able to kill a lot of the targets that you're going to be facing in one clip. It will take you 2 or sometimes 3. So you're going to have to think ahead to the targets that you're going to be engaging and make sure that you do not overcommit. Also, one last thing here talking about survivability of the tank is the actual profile size of the tank. If you look at the Lukes here, the Lukes is actually significantly smaller than the Leopards. So as you're driving around on the battlefield, the Leopard is a much bigger profile target, and you are easier to hit. So you have to be watching which bushes you pick so that your tank is completely covered by them, as you are a larger profile tank. But that is more than enough analysis, and let's just jump into the game. Now, the first thing that we do, of course, at the start of every battle is analyze the team compositions. And going down through the team listings here, we can see here that there's actually a relatively high number of tank destroyers on each side. I was playing a decent number of battles in this tank today, and I will tell you that there was a ridiculous number of E25s in surfing around in the pub matches. A lot of people have earned their E25s through the September missions, and quite honestly, as I said before in previous videos, I think Wargaming made that tank way too easy to earn. So there's quite an influx of E25s in pub matches at the moment, and they're literally raining from the sky. So it was kind of nice to see that there's only 2 E25s between both teams in this game. Also, there is 3 artillery on each side. So as I've mentioned before in previous videos, when you have a high number of artillery on each side, and especially on large maps like Highway here, that means that during the progression of the battle, it is going to be much more likely that there's going to be holes and gaps in tank defense lines and firing lines on your team and on the enemy team. So you need to be looking how you can fill the vision gaps and the firing lane gaps for your team, or exploit the gaps on the enemy team. Just because when you have a large number of artillery, there just isn't enough tanks to cover a continuous line of positions on the map. Because Artie isn't a frontline tank, it actually can't, it doesn't directly engage with its targets, so it's not actually sitting there facing off and preventing an enemy tank from taking a position. So enough of that, let's just start the game. Now, I know that their team is set up a little bit better to be aggressive in the field, but being a scout tank, I want to at least know what's coming, and I'm going to be planning to move up here to A2 just to spot what moves down along the 1 line to E1 and D1. So at the very least, if I can't engage whatever's coming, that my team will know what is out in the field. Looks like our Chaffee's also sitting in the riverbed to get some vision there. I found that since they changed this map, you don't get as much vision from the riverbed as you used to, especially onto the 1 line. You kind of have to be a little bit more aggressive and to get better spots. Now, as you see there, I turn my tank back down the hill so that if and when I get spotted, that if I fire and engage a target like I do in this T-67, I can immediately run away and not have to be sitting in a single position while I'm turning my tank 180 degrees, and it means that it's a lot less likely that I'll get shot. So that's a technique that you guys can employ in any passive position if you have time. And if the sides of your tank don't get exposed around the bush, just turn your tank around so that you're ready to retreat if you get pushed, and your survivability will go up. Now I'm just kind of playing by feel here. The enemy has a large portion of tanks here, and as you can see from the mini map, we only have a Cheeto, a Jägerpanzer IV, and the Chaffee in the riverbed. But as long as the enemy isn't pushing, I want to try to keep them lit. But I take a look at the Cheeto's hit points there, and he's already at half HP, so I know that he's going to die soon. Unfortunately, the Jagdpanzer moved down from his perch into the riverbed. I think he was just trying to get in draw range of these targets. But that means that he won't be able to retreat when he gets pushed, and he'll eventually die. Now, the Nashorn was actually out of my engagement range. Using this autoloader or autocannon on this tank, and it's the same with the Lukes, is you can only engage targets that are, and hit targets that are 400 meters or closer to you. I was originally planning to keep my head down and move along this riverbed into the enemy base, but for some weird reason the enemy T-29 is still sitting at the southern bridge quite close to their spawn, so maybe he was AFK and he's just come into the battle, but it was really surprising and I wasn't really planning on seeing him there. But as a scout player, you've got to adapt to the situation. I'm hoping here that he's moved up further into the city, but he's still sitting where he was. So I decided at this point, I'll just pause the game here. I decided at this point it's too late to run away. At a certain point, if you've made a bad decision, you will just make it worse by trying to retreat in some situations. So at this point, I figure, well, if he's all by himself, then maybe I can out-traverse him and solo him myself. If I try to run away, I have where to run away to. If I go to free cam here. If I try to run away up into the base, everybody can see me. He can just turn around and shoot me, and everybody that's along the E line here, the Nashorn and maybe the 12T would come back, can shoot me from here. Also, that same thing applies if I try to run away back along the riverbed here. If I try to run away back to the riverbed here, I've lost all my support in the base here. As you can see, that Cheeto and the Jagdpanzer IV died. So that means that I will have no support even if I survive getting back to this bridge area here along the E line. And it will means that I will be driving into a bunch of enemy tanks, so that won't work either. So my only option is to try and engage this T-29 and go solo on him. Unfortunately for us, he doesn't seem to be a very good player, so I get behind him and unload my clip into the back of his tank. The back of most American heavy tanks, even the higher tier ones, are really soft, so you can sometimes even pen them with HE from certain guns. Kind of make a misplay there with shooting the tracks, but I make the rest of my clip count. I get shot in the back by the Nashorn and once by the Bishop. Fortunately, the 304 wasn't really paying attention to us until now, and our artillery kills him. So unfortunately, we lose a lot of HP there in that engagement, but the T-29 dies and the 304 dies, so technically the engagement was a win and a success. I'm just going to pause the game here. When you're engaging targets that do not have a traversable turret, you have to decide if you want to try and flank and engage them. Now, one, he's already looking at me, so I've lost the element of surprise. Even if I did know where he was looking, and I could choose to go around his blind side, he is sitting on the red line here, which means I can't actually flank around him. Now, this just doesn't apply to the edge of the map. He could be sitting on the edge of this building here. This also applies to tank destroyers. So if they're competent enough and experienced enough of a player, they can just put their butt up against a solid piece of cover, like a building or a rock or even the edge of the map, and you will eventually have to drive in front of their gun, because they will just turn towards the side that you're coming from. And if you do not have enough horsepower to keep them from turning, as is most of the time is the case, and you're going to be eventually driving in front of their guns. So I decide just to shoot at him here as I'm driving by and hoping that he will miss and disengage from him because I cannot flank him here. Kind of trying to decide what to do here, and since the KB-85 died, now we know that the Tiger is all by himself in the city. Do some really pro driving here, and now my plan is to help 2v1 this Tiger. So if he's looking one way, I shoot him, and if he's looking my way, then the Hellcat can shoot him. So whoever's the focus of the Tiger, the other guy gets free damage, basically, is how it works in any engagement like this. And you can see here that the Hellcat starts pumping rounds into him. I'm trying to rock back and forth here because I know the Bishop can still shoot me. Some more pro driving there. So unfortunately, I don't get as much damage out of this engagement as I could have, but we were able to get the Tiger killed there with the final clip. And the more important thing is here is the engagement was played like it was supposed to. If you aren't getting the damage, then you aren't getting the damage. So but if the enemy tank dies, that's the goal, right? I'm gonna pause the game here a second again. Now that there is a 50-50 chance that the guy sitting in the cap circle is either the Nashorn or the AMX-12T, but I'm kind of out of options here. Highway is a really large map, and I don't have time to go and find their artillery and kill them and come back and reset. There just wouldn't be enough time. There's just too much distance to cover on this map to do that. Whoever's sitting in my cap circle will win the game and cap out before I'm able to do that. So I need to try and spot the cap or kill whatever is sitting in the cap. Spotting for my FV304, hopefully that will help me. Hopefully. So that's kind of my thought process as I'm deciding to go back and defend here. Now, as I mentioned in previous videos, when you're going to back to defend, and now that we've seen the 12T down there in H9, we know it's the Nashorn. So if you're in a position to where you can't really spot the cat from range, and you need to get in close to reset or kill whatever's in cap, you want to conceal your approach as long as possible, so that when you pop up, you will hopefully be at a very sharp, unexpected angle to your enemy, and you will have them flanked. And that's what we do here. Unfortunately, he was facing my direction, but because of our technique and waiting to the last second to pop into the cap circle, his slow reaction time and meant that in conjunction with his kind of bad aim as well, I was able to traverse him. He kind of panicked because he didn't have a lot of time to make his decisions, and I was able to get around him and flank him. And our FV304 does a really good job in helping me take him out. Pausing the game here again. I would really love to help save this FV304 from the AMX-12T, but I know eventually, despite how mobile this artillery is, that the AMX-12T will catch up to him pretty quick here. And the best thing that I can do, I cannot survive a direct engagement. If I come back and sit with this guy, even at a different angle, the AMX-12T can kill us both in one clip. I only have 35 hit points, and the FV304 has only 280 hit points, so he could really easily kill us in just one of his clips. So what I need to do is stay far, not completely abandon the 304, but stay far enough away that if I shoot the AMX-12T from range, I have another line of cover to retreat to, and then I can reload and hopefully kill the AMX-12T with subsequent clips from my vehicle. So that's what we do here. We're just trying to get some range on the AMX-12T. So one, just so purely that he cannot spot us as we move into our position from range. And we're going to pause here and try to get some shots in here. So hopefully that he'll be a one clip for me. But unfortunately, that really poor accuracy I was talking about with this gun, 0.46 and firing full burst, more or less. I could have made small bursts with my gun, but I did not have a lot of time to retreat. As soon as I fire, he knows which direction I am, and I wouldn't have a lot of time to retreat. So unfortunately, only one of my shells hit and pen. And fortunately for us, even though the M12 had us traversed for a second, I don't think he had enough gun depression because he was sitting on a back slope. So his gun was facing slightly up. And we're able to get him killed with one clip. That's one thing that this gun can do with certain artillery that it faces. You can one clip certain artillery pieces. You can one clip tier 6 artillery and tier 5 artillery, no problem. And you can one clip a lot of tier 7 artillery potentially if you get average damage rolls from your clip. And now I'm just running away here. I'm trying not to dive here down into the riverbed because I want to keep as much speed as possible and running away from this 12T. You can see there that I spot him and he doesn't spot me. And he was starting to drive towards K1, so he may have Sixth Sense and thought that he got spotted from their artillery corner. So that gives me a lot of extra time to pull range from him. Now this is when battles like this, it's all about a game of the minds and a game of wits. I will win or lose this battle based on prediction of where he is going to move, and prediction just based off of his play style and player tendencies in general. Now I want to make sure, I just want to try and find him again to see where he is, and hopefully find the bishop. Now the bishop actually shot at me while I was killing the M12 earlier, so I know that he's somewhere in the riverbed area, around F4, F5, maybe G4, because the bishop has a really short engagement range. His shells don't travel very far, and there he is, and we get him spotted. Pause the game here real quick. Now we know where both of them are, and so now I can decide how I want to engage them. It looks like the AMX-12T came back, and now thinking about it psychologically, since he knew which direction I ran away from after I killed the 12 or the M12 artillery, he knew that I probably ran away over here, and judging by how he's driving along this E-line, it looks like he's going to try and drive up the road and just cap out. So just judging by player behavior, you're going to try to decide what they're going to do, and then you can make your decisions off that. Also, a secondary thing to mention here is I cannot emphasize enough how much good crews and crew equipment and any consumables that you might be using and accessories such as vehicle camo paint, I cannot emphasize how much of a difference this makes. Look at the range I am to this 12T. We are sitting at a diagonal here, so but we're only about 300 meters away from him, or maybe even slightly less, maybe around 280 meters, and he did not spot me. So That means that my almost full camo crew, my brothers in arms, and my camo paint on my vehicle um, is out working his view range, whatever it is. He may not even have a 100% crew, um, and he may not have coated optics on his tank since he's moving. He wouldn't have extra view range since he's moving. So, but the point is, he should be able to spot me the same as I should be able to spot him, just from because of our base view ranges are so close. But he doesn't have a good enough crew or the right equipment on his tank. So this is the kind of difference that those kind of choices can make in battles, guys. This can actually win you games, as in this situation. So let's just keep going. So right now I'm just wanting to pull some range from the 12T just to make sure that he won't spot me, and I'm going to rotate back up into the field here. And since I know that the AMX-12T is moving along the E-line road and going towards our cap is probably what his goal is, I'm going to let him get far enough away from his artillery to where I can engage the artillery alone and he won't be able to react in time to save him, and I will be able to get back in cover. Now the bishop actually does something a little surprising. He starts moving to cap. So it's a slight change of plans. I was going to engage the bishop at close range, but now I can just shoot him from range here at about 350 meters or so, and I don't have to worry about getting spotted because the 12T is too far away and the bishop has really bad view range, and we get him killed with 2 clips. Now it's a really tricky situation because the AMX-12T has a lot of his health left, and I cannot engage him at close range for the most part. So I stop here and try to spot the cat from range just to see if I can get a first reset in, but I don't see him. The scout tanks have good enough camo rating there that where you probably won't spot him from that range unless they fire. So I'm just trying to figure out how close I can get to him to spot him without him spotting me. As I saw earlier, as I was driving through the field, I spotted him and he didn't spot me, so I know I have a buffer zone to work with here where I can spot him. And we get around that bush that was concealing him. He's looking the wrong way, and I stop just long enough to get the reset in, and not the full clip. So I don't want to expose myself too long and give him an opportunity to shoot me, because I am a one-shot. So I get a little bit of damage on him, but he is still too healthy for me to kill in one clip. So I'm going to try and do the same thing again here and whittle him down to eventually where I can just rush in and kill him in one clip. Unfortunately, we're having a hard time spotting him again. He spots me again there. I'm a little bit too close to him. I'm at about 260 meters, so that's close enough for him to spot me, even with his poor crew or poor equipment layout. And unfortunately, he sees me crossing down in here. I was planning to pop up through to A7 to shoot at him from down from the ditch, but he sees me crossing, and he kind of ruined my plan. Now I'm pausing the game here a second to talk about the decision I'm making here. I keep moving while I'm spotted, right? This is a trick that you can do with a lot of players. It doesn't always work, especially with players that are more experienced and know this trick, but you'd be really surprised at how often this works. Where if you're spotted by the enemy and you aren't able to do anything about it because you're already moving in a certain direction, keep moving in that certain direction until you're unlit. I got spotted by him as I was crossing down here through D7. And so, looking at the minimap here, I kept driving along the C6 and B6 area until I was unlit, because I want him to think one thing, right? And if I know that he's going to be expecting me to come from a certain angle, that means that I can outthink him and come back from another direction, and in this case, the position I was before. So he will be facing the wrong way, and I'll get the first jump on him. So you can use this trick in a lot of one-on-one situations if you are in a more mobile tank, or if you're in a tank that has more hit points, and so you can just out damage your opponent. So I'd recommend trying this technique out in the future for you guys. But let's just keep going. So once I'm unlit, I reverse and go back a different direction here. I was halfway expecting to see him through that gap, but I don't. And we proxy light him there through the building, and he is facing the wrong way. We get our full clip into him and do 296 damage. So now he is a one clip for me, and I have this hard point of cover that I can just play ring around the rosy with him until I'm reloaded. I'm a more mobile tank than he is. The MX-12T, while it may be fast going assisted downhill, it's actually one of the more sluggish scout tanks, and so I have better acceleration and terrain resistances than him, and I can just play ring around the rosy with him. Now I'm trying to figure out how to get the angle on him without him being able to shoot me. And I find the corner of his tank, and since his armor is so thin, I am able to overmatch it, even with my little pop gun, and we get him killed. So this is probably the most exciting game that I've played so far in the VK 16.02 Leopard, the Tier 5 German scout tank. But as you see, this tank isn't necessarily bad. It kind of gets a poor rap because of its underwhelming offensive capabilities as far as its guns, either gun that you might choose, this gun or the 5cm, I think is what it is. I'll have to look that up later. But just because of the mediocre penetration that either gun has, but you can definitely make the gun work. You just have to pick and choose your engagements. Knowing which targets that you can pen with standard or premium ammo, knowing that you can only do so much damage with your clip, so don't overcommit yourself in certain situations. And it has pretty decent view range for a Tier 5 scout. It has 380 meters base view range, so it can do the spotting thing that all scouts can do pretty well. So as I was talking about before, I may even try coated optics with this tank, even though it has 380 meters base view range, because a lot of the targets I'll be facing don't have very good view range, so it'd be interesting to see how this tank would perform with that equipment layout. But I would recommend always using binocs on this tank and vents. So this is not a bad scout tank. It's just kind of a misunderstood scout tank, and you can have a lot of fun in this tank if you are just show a little bit more discretion in your positioning and a little bit more discretion in which fights that you pick and which engagements you pick on the battlefield. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this replay and learned more about this Tier 5 German light tank that not a lot of people play. Good luck out there on the battlefield, and take care.